Today we're making coq au vin, a rustic, wine-forward chicken braise with lardons, mushrooms and herbs. We start with the bacon. Older recipes often involve the process of scalding, meaning blanching it briefly in boiling water before frying. That's because what they were referring to as bacon or lardon is the modern-day equivalent of salt pork belly or smoked pork belly. You need that process to remove the excess salt. With supermarket bacon, as long as they're unsmoked, you can simply render the fat gradually, starting with a cold pan. Once the fat is mostly rendered, if you want to stay closer to the classic flavor profile, you have the option to skim off most of the bacon fat and introduce some butter. We gradually increase the heat to lightly brown what is now our lean bacon, developing complex, meaty flavors, concentrating the natural umami of the salted pork. It's worth noting that butter has a smoke point of 150 degrees Celsius because of the milk solids, and rendered animal fat does not go much higher than that because of the impurities, so stay on the gentle side with your stove. Once you can see these golden bubbles, we introduce our pearl onions. Presentation aside, they behave very differently than chopped onion because of the higher fiber density. They hold their shapes and slowly release their sweetness. So if the shopping permits, do use them. Blanch them briefly for 20 seconds for easy peeling, Julia style, and we slowly caramelize the natural sugars, developing some nutty complexity. If you don't have access to pearl onions, you can use small shallots or use banana shallots cut into quarters. Once the cut side of your onions have taken on this beautiful light caramel color, everything comes out temporarily. With all that yummy butter and lardon fat mixture, chicken goes into sear. Of course, historically, this will be a whole cockerel, but for the home kitchen, chicken thighs and drums are your best bets. This also works extremely well with turkey legs. Skin on, not to have crispy skin, we won't, but A, to protect the meat from drying out. B, and more importantly, we want the collagen in the skin, which after long cooking will give us mouth-coating gelatine, thickening our sauce. For the same reason, we want the chicken to be bone-in. And first, we evaporate the surface moisture to help us get past boiling point. Then, through heat, we develop complex, meaty flavors via the Maillard reaction. Later, nutty, roasted notes thanks to caramelization. Do them in batches so they don't steam themselves. And again, gentle heat. Once we're lightly golden, everything back in. Probably should have used a bigger pot. Optional cognac for some woody, fruity caramel note. And when used with butter, you get this vanilla-like complexity. You have the option to flambe for some theatrics, but ethanol has a much lower boiling point than water. With long cooking, the alcohol would cook off without the flame. Now the vin in coq au vin, please don't use expensive wine. It won't make the dish tastier. What we want from the wine is acidity to balance the richness of our dish and to help with gelatin extraction. A bit of tannin to give the sauce a bit of body, the signature color, and, if we're lucky, some fruity notes. Most older wine-based recipes do not call for the reduction before simmering. You want that soft, rounded, integrated wine flavor. Now the bouquet garni. Parsley stalks for the duration of this dish will bring mostly vegetable sweetness. Thyme, mostly for some woody, herbal note. Dry bay leaf for some piney, earthy background. A couple of lightly crushed garlic cloves for some umami and sweetness. We taste and adjust the seasoning, factoring in the lardons we've used. Lid on, 45 minutes. After 45 minutes, we saute our mushrooms, usually with butter, but here we have some herb-infused butter. We skim off all of the fat straight into our saute pan. First, very low heat to evaporate the accidentally skimmed off liquid. Mushrooms in to saute in this very flavoursome oil. Do this in batches if need be. If presentation is not a consideration, I recommend quartering them. They'll brown a lot more evenly. Once beautifully golden brown, they join the party. And we're once again keeping all the fat in our pan. 20 minutes for the flavors to melt. Now, normally to finish, you would make what's called a beurre manié, a butter and flour mixture to thicken the sauce and give it a gloss. Well, we have some mushroom-scented butter with just the right amount of mushroom juices to mimic the water content of actual butter at room temperature. We add equal part all-purpose flour. And you work it however you like into a smooth paste, deglassing the pan at the same time. This is much closer to a starch slurry than a roux, as the fat would still mostly float to the top, giving us the signature gloss. If you want to disperse the fat, bring in some temperature and you can make a light roux. Once this is starting to become doughy, and for this recipe you don't need it too thick, we introduce our liquid gradually. For the starch to start gelatinizing, thickening the sauce. And we do this on the side to prevent clumping. And we add as much or as little as we like. We once again gradually bring back some heat to cook out the raw taste of the flour. Now with heat, you can really see the sauce thickening. Once it's starting to coat the back of your spoon, our coq au vin is ready.